Everybody come in so that everybody can hear before we start. But I guess we should get going. It's 10 after. My name is Jim Hirschfield. I'm the chairman of the Region 12 Board of Education. On behalf of the Board of Education, all right. On behalf of the Board of Education, I'd like to invite and thank all of you for coming out tonight, for taking the time to come for this very important subject. I want to introduce, before we get started, our new superintendent of schools. Most of you have met Dr. Pat Cosentino. When the board hired Pat as of July 1st, one of the things that it asked her to do was to revive this long-range planning process, which she has done. She's been very aggressive, and she'll be here tonight. I also want to introduce Mr. Jonathan Costa. Many of you may know if you've been involved in this process. Mr. Costa has acted as the facilitator of the committee, the Long-Range Planning Committee. You may know that in the summer of 2011, when the board committee was dawdling for various reasons, the three first selectmen of the towns came to the board with Mr. Costa, said they had interviewed him, and asked the board to hire him as the facilitator for their Long-Range Planning Committee because the three first selectmen wanted to see the matter go forward. And so that was done. The towns each paid $5,000 towards Mr. Costa's fees up front, but it is a board committee of which he was the agreed upon facilitator. Since that occurred, of course, we've changed superintendents, and the process goes forward. What's going on tonight happened recently. It's back on September 25th. There was a meeting of this committee at which options were put out, things were prioritized, and choices were made. It was felt that it would be best to give the communities another chance, the community members another chance, to be sure that we had a good representation of people who wanted to be heard with regard to this matter. And so we have this event tonight. I know Dr. Cosentino has done her best to advertise it, to get the word out, to invite people. So I'm glad you're here. With that said, also present we have members of the Board of Ed, Valerie Anderson, who is our treasurer and the head of our finance committee. There's a lot of financial information that the committee has assembled. Our business manager, Mr. Deason, is also here. So with that said, Dr. Cosentino, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I really want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. It's great to see you all. This is a process that was started before I became superintendent of the region, but as Mr. Hirschfeld has said, I have been given the charge to continue. I think it's important, as we all sit here, that we think of ourselves as a region and we think of long-term plans. We have to think about 10, 20, 30 years, what is going to take this region for our kids to the future. Every time I speak to someone, whether it's a parent or an administrator or a teacher or a board member, everyone always says, we have to do something. But then when push comes to shove, people get very nervous about what that something is. Tonight is a continuation of our September meeting. At our September meeting, we had 21 people sit and do the same process that we're going to do tonight, led by Jonathan Costa. This process is not going to be, no decisions are going to be made tonight about what we're going to do about the future of our district and our region. We are going to make decisions about what options we are going to research. And when we think about research and what options we want to put forth, and Jonathan will explain the process, you have to understand that we have to limit them, because every time you research an option, it's going to cost money. Okay, so we have to really research options that are feasible for our region. You're all going to have a chance to speak on an option. We did not want to eliminate the work that we did in September, so Jonathan is going to talk to you about all of the options that came through the last time. And some of them are going to be continued in this forum so that we do not just wipe away the work and those people who were at the last meeting. Only people who live in the towns are going to be allowed tonight to participate as far as the vote goes later on. I've asked the staff not to participate in the voting unless they are a taxpayer and reside in the towns. I'm going to ask you that you are respectful. I'm going to ask that you represent our region in a positive way. We are taping this for Channel 17 for those people who could not be here. When it is your turn to speak, you are going to come to the microphone over there, and we're going to move in that fashion. So I just ask you to really remember that everyone in this room loves their children, loves their town, and wants what's best for the region and for the education and the lives of their children, okay, and their community. And so we could get a little passionate, we can get a little enthusiastic, and that's fine, but we really want to do it in a respectful way so that this way everyone's voices are heard and we really can make the best decisions for the region. With that said, I am going to introduce Valerie Anderson, who is the chairperson of the Finance Committee, who's just going to give you a little summary of the cost per student and how we arrived at that. And then after that, we'll have Jonathan come up and talk about the process. Thank you.
Hi, we met in August and then of course in September, and it was the charge of the Finance Committee of the Board of Education to come in and discuss commonly accepted financial statements to figure out the facts of where we are today. And this we know is that our population is decreasing, that we have our cost per pupil is going up as a result, and that parenthetically, we have some debt capacity in certain years so that whatever we decide, if we decide to do anything, there is some availability in our debt servicing to do this in a fairly budget neutral fashion. We did decide, everyone sat around and decided on our cost per pupil per school. We have cost centers, and this will help us as we get into the exploration of different suggestions. Just for your information, we have 847 kids in the entire Region 12 now. We had 1,169 kids in 2003. That was our high point. It's been decreasing ever since. We have demographic studies done constantly, and that trend is continuing and has been verified. The reason why we're here tonight is that a summary of cost centers are the cost per student, that is just the budget, our last approved budget, divided by the number of kids in each school. The cost per student at Booth Free is $26,838 per kid. Burnham, $32,386 per child. Washington, $27,300 per child. Once again, it's a division, so it's a number of students in each school. Middle school, $23,885 per child, and in the high school, $23,146. Once again, a function of our budget, what we have to do to keep the doors open and the kids properly educated, but we have a declining population. Our total number of cost per student, all in, is $25,214. So we see we can't really continue this way. So that's why we're here today. Population's going down, costs stay steady or go up. Fortunately, there is a debt service availability that whatever we decide to do in the course of 3 years or so, I think the region can properly support debt for whatever is decided, if anything. So that's it from the financial end.
We did not give you that cost per student sheet, but I can get it on the website if you're interested. It's just that we didn't give it to you because it's very specific. But what we did give you, one of the things, just so you have for your information, a lot of people were asking about background information, and we're not really doing that tonight. What we're doing tonight is talking about possible options for our facilities and what we want to research in the future. But it'll talk to you, the first page talks to you about some of the impact of the demographic and economic data that the Long Range Planning Committee did under Jonathan over the last year. And then the rest of the pages talk about Goal 3. That's what we're talking about. It's Goal 3. It's dealing with the declining population and the facilities. And if you look, you'll just see on the last page, 27, number 3. This is what we're doing tonight. We're brainstorming, prioritizing, and selecting several potential configurations and solutions. Having identified the criteria, which Jonathan is going to talk about, this group should then identify 2 to 5 new configuration options. Given a 10-year projection, what are the most practical options for moving forward? Status quo, consolidation options, other. So that's where we are. With that said, I'd like to bring Jonathan up to the podium.
Good evening, everyone. Having been part of the planning process, the other aspect of Goal 3 is maintaining or improving the educational program as well. It's one of the things that the planning team dealt with in deciding Goal 3 and the criteria for success that you see behind me. What color sheet is it, Greg? The criteria. Is that the yellow sheet? Orange. Okay. Okay. You can notice that one of the things that we tried to do in building the structure for decision-making for this goal was create a set of criteria that decision makers could use to make thoughtful recommendations about moving forward. And the first 2 set of criteria that you see up there are focused on the 2 major issues that were driving the discussion around the formation of Goal 3 in the strategic plan and around the discussion of options in this part of laying out Goal 3. And they are educational quality and cost. One of the challenges, it's just a matter of timing, is that all public schools in Connecticut right now are faced with some significant change challenges. There's a new state curriculum, there's a new framework for teacher evaluation, there's going to be a new state test. All of this creates burdens of work for faculty and stretches resources in schools. This is an important point because as the size of your schools shrinks, the number of people and the resources you can bring to bear on solving those problems, working through those issues, and making sure that you can meet the challenges that they present becomes, to a large degree, a matter of scale. So small is good up to a point, and then it becomes a challenge. So what you see in the criteria behind me, which were developed by the group, was what are we going to look at, not just tonight, but when the options are decided for further study, what agreed upon framework will we use to compare one to the other? And what you see on the screen behind me and on that sheet are the criteria that the group selected to compare one to the other once we're through. So what happens tonight is we're going to try to decide which options to study, and each option will then be studied through the lens of the criteria that you see on that sheet. So from an educational standpoint, the ability of the option to support curriculum and instructional alignment, making sure that all children are getting an equal and balanced educational program across the district, the ability to make good decisions about classroom arrangements and classroom assignments, balance among the communities and throughout the region. Equality of opportunity, meaning that your physical location of your house shouldn't dictate the quality of education for your child. Everyone should have a similar level of quality across the region. And the amount of flexibility and adaptability available within that structure to meet changing needs. So how flexible is your arrangement? That's the educational quality side. And when it says more is better for all in this category, all that says is the more your alignment, the better your balance, the more equal the opportunity, and the more flexible and adaptable the structure, the higher a rating that option would get when we study it. For fiscal, we're looking at combined by town, and when we say less is better for all in this category, if we can keep per pupil expenditures down or lower them, if we can maintain quality building, what's the most cost-effective way to maintain the buildings and facilities in the district? The logistics, management, and transportation impact. So the less the impact on families and children, the better. And the amount of time required to implement a new solution. The more efficient the implementation, the better. Logistical concerns, because if you decide to make a change, making the change requires work and effort. So easier is better. How difficult a transition are you proposing? How hard is the management and movement of resources caused by the change? What impact will that have? And what is the transportation impact? Again, lower impact is better. And finally, cultural and political implications, because these are important. The impact on traditional culture and local communities, obviously less impact is better there. The likelihood of voter support. Whatever you decide to do, other than not do anything, there probably will have to be a plurality of support in all three of your towns. So it's no use bringing forth an option that has no political chance of succeeding. So the viability of an option politically is an important consideration, because why would you invest all that time, all that money, all that resources only to have it fail? And finally, the complexity and challenge of making the change. So if you pick a solution that requires, 15 different communities to all get together and vote yes, that could take 10 years, versus something that you control completely on your own, that's something you control on your own. So basically what we tried to do in generating this list was create an objective set of criteria that the board and the committee will use to judge the options that we select tonight for further study. Just questions about that so far? Yes, sir.
Do you have any idea, if you pick an option, what the cost is to research it?
Good question. Did everybody hear the question? The question was, do we know how much it'll actually cost to research an option? And the answer is it depends on the option. Researching the cost of the status quo is pretty easy. We just take your budget and run it out 10 years and take your enrollment and run it out 10 years. And based on what you've spent in the last 10 years, we have a pretty good idea of what it will cost you to not change the configuration. It just depends on the complexity and the amount of change embedded in the option that you select. It's hard to know. I can tell you that my agency, I work for a regional service center in Litchfield called the Education Connection. Region 12 is one of our service areas. So the fees that were mentioned earlier were paid to my organization, not to me personally. I wish they were, they weren't. Our organization has 3 different communities that are dealing with the same kind of issues you are right now here in Region 12. And as part of a recent law passed in the state of Connecticut, there was $100,000 put aside by the legislature to encourage towns to seek increased efficiencies in their school operations. And the reason for this is that the State Department of Ed and the Governor's Office understand that one way to try to reduce or cap the growth of education costs is to increase the efficiency through which the educational product is delivered to the communities. So it is in their interest to help people seek greater efficiencies. We have applied for a grant to the State Department of Ed for some of that $100,000 to try to support towns like yours to do this study. We don't know if we're going to get it. We have 3 different communities that are interested, but it's a long way of saying, I can't tell you exactly what the cost of studying it is. We will do it as efficiently as possible, and there may be some external resources to support that work because there are others that are interested in seeing you succeed. The amount you spend to study it is directly in proportion to how thorough you want to be. I mean, if you said, study these 5 things based on just the information you have at your disposal and make projections, it could be done pretty efficiently. I mean, you could sit down in a room and in a couple of days with people who know these things, make some guesses. The challenge is when you come back to a community meeting like this and people start pressing you for the accuracy of your assumptions. If you haven't done an up-to-date demographic study, if you haven't done an architectural study because there's a building issue, etc., then you've got to come back and say, I don't know the answer to that. And sometimes having the answer is better than not and just guessing. So I think once you find out how many things you want to move forward, then we can try to determine how much it would cost to study. To give you an example, we, in a local community that we are working with, we studied 4 options, and it took about 4 months, and the total cost was about $8,000. We had demographic data and we had budget data. It was just a matter of running scenarios, running budgets, going back to the community and talking to them about it. So it's just a ballpark estimate. And this kind of study, if buildings are involved, includes expertise beyond our agency. You're going to have to talk to an architect. You're probably going to want, you may want more an up-to-date demographic study. Those are your decision, not mine. Val?
Could you address the fact that the state might begin to penalize regions like us because of our cost per pupil?
The question or the comment is, Valerie asked me to talk a little bit about the state's position on small districts. As I mentioned, the state has a vested interest in trying to help communities seek increased efficiencies. In the law that was passed this past spring, it's called Public Act 12-116. It is the same law that requires you to adopt a new teacher evaluation model. It will require you to take a new test. It's the latest reform legislation from the state of Connecticut. There is language in there related to the potential for ECS reduction, meaning the educational cost sharing grant that the state gives to every community to help defray the cost of public education. Granted, in communities like yours, the ECS grant is not substantial, but it is worth something. Bob, what's the ECS in Region 12? So, whatever. The idea here is for communities that have per pupil expense above the state average, the potential exists for a 10% reduction in your ECS funding every year for up to 5 years at a cap of 50%. Right now, every school in your community is about twice the state average. 2 are slightly less than twice the state average. 1 is approaching 3 times the state average. So you are in a vulnerable position from that. Take it for what it's worth. Yes, sir.
I didn't hear, how much was that credit? And you said potentially, right? That's not necessarily...
Correct. It's potential.
How much was that credit?
They didn't have an exact figure.
But is it
Jim?
10, 15, 100?
I mean, I've seen published before, I think the town of Washington, they don't break it up, gets like $10,000, and the other 2 towns get slightly less than that.
So it's probably 30,000 total. Okay.
And so are you doing the math?
Right. Mark, you know what it
The
is?
town of Washington's ECS grant is a little over $240,000 a year.
ECS.
ECS grant.
Okay. So roughly
I'm mistaken.
$250,000 for Washington alone. Now, it is potential. In the original draft of the legislation, it was set, they were going to do it. There was an outcry from small towns because typically there are 2 kinds of communities that fall into this category. Ones that are very wealthy and spend a lot of money, and small communities who end up having a high per pupil expense simply because they have so few pupils. And in the actual law that passed, the language is to study the impact of that legislation.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Maybe you didn't hear right, but I heard 30 and I heard $250,000. What's the number and what's the ramification for the action? Or lack thereof? And if I understand it correctly, it's potential, not necessarily a line stand.
You understand it correctly.
What's
Pat?
the number?
Go
We
ahead.
can get the number, because
Well,
what happens,
is it 30 or $250,000?
I don't know.
That's a big.
But okay, absolutely.
Yeah.
But, as I said, I can get you the number, I can put it in my newsletter on Friday. My secretary Tia taking everything I need to do, that regardless of what that number is, because the reason that there are 2 different numbers is because the money goes to the town, and then the town, the education piece comes to us. That's why there's an issue of what the exact number is. There's no funny business. We don't have any funny business here.
Well, listen, the
I just-
only reason why I qualify is because when you throw out a $250 million number,
No,
that
I
seems to
hear
be a
you.
scary, no, hear me out. That seems to be a very scary number
Right.
versus 30.
Right.
So I think if you're going to throw out a number like that, we need to be realistic in the assessment of that number.
Right,
And
and
that's all I
as I
said.
said, on Friday, it'll be in the newsletter. Okay, so we'll definitely get that number correct for what is the correct ECS amount that we get.
Yeah.
I think we should move on
Yep, I will.
to the next part.
It is to be studied. It is not declared as an impact.
Thank you.
One quick question, I'm going to go on.
Quick question.
Yep.
To your knowledge, does that penalty apply if a town or region's people have voted on a scenario that they wish to continue with, that they're okay with, that higher per pupil number? Are they still penalized if they vote that they want to do that?
I mean, I think I can't speak for the legislature, I can't speak for the governor, and I can't speak for the commissioner. So I really don't want to, I don't even want to speculate. I don't,
The new thing.
this year. Yep. Any other questions about the criteria?
Could you tell us the cost per student in Connecticut? Cost?
The average per pupil expenditure is a little over $12,000. You have to be very careful when you compare per pupil expenditures because the state formula that I just gave you does not include special education or transportation. When we gave the per pupil expenditures for you, the committee decided that the gross number, including everything, was the way to go, so people saw what the actual dollar amount was.
Can you break it down compared to the state number? Was it an apples to apples comparison?
We have that in, when Gary, is Gary here?
Right here.
When Gary ran the numbers, we have the net number on that page, and we will give it to you.
Well, you're 20.
Gary, go ahead. Can you tell them what the net is so you can compare it to the state?
I'm sorry, I was looking for the
Oh, the ECS?
What was the question?
The net per pupil, so we can compare it to the state.
The net,
We have it, know exactly where it is.
gross cost per student.
We want the net without transportation or special ed. You put that in there,
21
didn't you?
change.
21,000 is the district average, the net.
21,505.
So it's about 1.9 times the average.
So what you're saying is 25,000 that you quoted us earlier includes the transportation?
Correct.
Okay.
Right. Because what happens is when you go to a community, you start talking about per pupil, and people see, they know what the budget number is, they know what the enrollment is, they do the division, and the number doesn't add up, they think you're trying to hide something. And so we just decided to go with the gross and keep it out there. All right, so.
That's transportation, pupil, and what else?
Debt, and debt service. Okay, so at the meeting that we had last month, that's the yellowish canary kind of sheet. Goldenrod, thank you. Never trust a colorblind facilitator. The reason above the dotted line it says study options already decided, right from the very beginning, we always said that regardless of what criteria we use, we would study the status quo. What would changing nothing look like financially and educationally in the district? So that's going to happen no matter what. At the last meeting, we brainstormed. There were about 20 total options. We then combined a couple because they were saying the same thing. And then we did a vote, a weighted vote. Everyone in the room had an equal number of votes, and they all voiced their preference. The consolidate all students at the Shepaug campus, essentially closing the 3 elementaries, reconfiguring this facility to house everybody K-12 got about twice as many votes as any other option. So we brought that one with us as well. The rest that you see up there, the remaining 16, are sort of on the table for your consideration tonight. And what I'm going to do is I'll walk through them so you know what we're saying for each one. We'll then give you a chance to ask questions about those briefly. Then if you have a significantly different idea than what's up there, we'll add that to the list. Then give you a chance to advocate for items. And then if you're a resident of any one of the 3 towns, you'll have a chance to express your preference for up to 3 of the items that you see up there that you think are worthy of study, in addition to the top 2 above the dotted line. Hang on one second. And we will tally those votes, take the top 2 or 3 ideas from this meeting, combine it with the other 2, and drive those total group forward for study and further consideration. Yes?
Just to be clear, the top option you said had twice as many votes as the others, but the other 16 are not in order of the way they were voted at the last meeting.
Absolutely not, and I'm going to explain that in a second.
Okay.
And I can show you what it looked like after that meeting if you want. I just tried to clean it up so it would be not prejudicial to this group. Basically what you see on that page are 2 groups of options. The first 5 all are some flavor of not using this facility. So option 1, close Shepaug, tuition out the middle high school. Basically, that would keep the 3 elementaries open, and the regional board would find takers negotiate tuition arrangements with neighboring schools to educate your middle and high school students.
Excuse me,
Yes?
just a point of interest.
Yep.
In that concept of high school, would a private school also be included in that?
That would be part of the study. I don't think that's likely.
Well, after discussing with another region that has done that, they've tuitioned out their high school students. What their board does is they make an arrangement with one local school, because you have to have at least one school that will accept your students, and then you make an arrangement for tuition. So it's not going to be a private school tuition. It's probably going to be anywhere around $12,000 to $15,000. That's just an average in my head, knowing that what our Sherman students pay. So it's never going to be a private school.
That does not mean, I think what you're saying is a voucher. Is it a voucher? It's not going to be a voucher. It'll be a negotiated agreement. The tuition rate is typically set by the receiving Board of Ed, and that's how it works. Yes, sir.
Question, you spoke earlier about not including something that had a very low likelihood of being accepted. And so I ask you, why are you including close all 3 elementary schools? Because I can tell you right now, that the likelihood of that being accepted is down here.
When, I understand. When
You're going to waste a lot of time with that.
Okay. When the first group met, that was the I'm just telling you, the first group met, their vote, that was the highest rated option, and it's only going to be studied.
But you're going to waste money studying.
Well, the group that voted the first time did not think it was going to be wasted. And what we didn't want to do was have that group come together, spend their time, act in their best faith and best interest, and then have none of what they did matter moving forward. So we just took one option, that the one option that they voted on, and it was about twice as many. It had 65 votes. The next highest rated item had 48. So we brought that one forward. It's just for study.
It's wasted.
Any questions about I'm just going to walk through the list, and then you can ask some more questions. The second option, consolidate K-8 tuition out the high school. So have a consolidated K-8 school, tuition out 9-12. Keep K-8s in towns, tuition out the high school. That one would turn each local elementary into a K-8 building, and then tuition out the high school. The fourth one was create elementary magnets, sort of theme or specialty schools. So the idea being create some sort of new and exciting program that would draw more kids to the region as a way to deal with declining enrollment. Number 5 is sort of vote to de-regionalize and come up with a new regional configuration. So, one town joins one existing district somewhere else, basically break it up and start over. All of the options below the space are some sort of configuration where this facility stays open and you do something else. So one pre-K to 8 school with a separate high school. So pick one or build a new one, have pre-K to 8 at that place, keep the high school separate. Pre-K at Burnham, K-12 here at Shepaug. Close Booth in Burnham, keep Washington, and here Middle High. Do Burnham as the pre-K, Booth as K-5, and Shepaug as a magnet. That obviously involves closing Washington. K-2 in Bridgewater, 3-5 in Roxbury or Washington. Keep Shepaug as it is. Consolidate and create a special program here at Shepaug to bring students in. So some folks run special education programs, for example, and they take in tuition students as a way to try to create revenue, sort of get money going in the opposite direction. Close Booth, keep Burnham, Washington, and Shepaug. 1 pre-K, 3 in an existing building, then 412 here. Keep Washington primary, build 1 new elementary for Roxbury and Bridgewater, keep Shepaug. Build 1 new pre-K to 5, keep Shepaug in the middle as the middle high. Close Washington primary, keep the other 2 and Shepaug. You can see what the group was trying to do is think of every different sort of possible configuration they could think of to consider. Just questions about the options.
For option, is it 14? I understood from the last time we went through this dance that every school, every town needed to have its own elementary, or we needed 1 consolidated elementary because of the original charter.
If you have an option that involves a change to that, then every town must have a plurality of support for whatever option it is. So you can do whatever you want if all 3 towns will vote for it. That's the key. So there's nothing on this list that's not doable if every town will vote to support it. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to ask you again about these numbers. You said that the reason that the consolidation option is above the line is because it got twice as many votes, and you said it got 65?
Yeah.
And then you said the next highest got 48?
Correct. You're right. It's not twice as many. It's about 1/3 as many.
It's 20.
And I'll show you the numbers. Well, then we'll take. You can do whatever you want. This
We
is.
didn't want, the discussion was that we did not want to,
Can you go to the mic?
oh, I'm sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's those are with it.
When we made the decision to include the top 1, which was, it's not there anymore, close the 3 elementaries and put everybody up on the Shepaug campus, we did that because we wanted to include the work and the time and validate those people who did come out and who spent over 3 hours one night doing this. So we felt that that was really important. And so that's why we included that 1. We didn't want to put all 5 there because then the idea was to bring you out here. We felt very strongly that we wanted your voices to be heard. Okay, and so that's why you're here. And so that's why we didn't include all of them that were the top 5, because we felt that if those were valid choices, they'd come out again tonight. Okay, so that's where we're at. How about the lady in the back? Yes.
Yes, I'm having a concern here. I understand you've been working on this for quite a while, and while I realize that you don't have all of the information, it's awfully hard for me to wrap around the idea that I'm going to be voting on something tonight when I have no idea of what the condition of the schools is in a general format. For instance, I know in Bridgewater, at the Burnham School, a lot of work was done as far as making the windows more efficient and everything else. Now, since I haven't driven over this area in close to 20 years since my kids graduated from high school, I took a little mosey and I went over to Roxbury Boothby School and I went over to the Washington Primary School. And I did not see, while I'm not an expert, I did not see what I thought looked like efficient windows. So in my mind, I don't want to see a school closed, but in my mind, I have to say to myself, you know, we could be spinning our wheels on 3 or 4 options that are just going to be so outrageously priced. And it's not clear to me, does anyone have any of the figures about the amount of renovations that were done and which schools have a lot more work and would be a lot more costly to bring up to any.
The question that this lady is asking about is the cost of the renovations that have been done in the buildings, the condition of the buildings, and how it's difficult to make any decisions when you don't have all that information. When we decide on the options that we're going to study, we will then bring in the needed people, to architects, electricians, engineers, to give us the information to move forward. Let me just finish, and then I'll be happy to answer your questions. From someone who has been here from July 1st, and I will always be honest with you. You may not like what I say, but I'll be honest with you. You have 4 very old buildings, okay? You have buildings that are up to code when they were built, okay? So you do not have buildings that do not need a lot of work. So any option that you go for is going to need some work in buildings. That's absolutely the truth. And when you start to do renovations on buildings, then you start to deal with the new codes. And the new codes are very dramatic. They are very expensive. They start with ADA codes. They go to air quality, and a whole bunch of areas that I'm not an expert in, but I'll just give you one little story from my time at Bethel High School that I like to tell. In my 16 years as principal, I have renovated 3 buildings. Not because I tried to do it, just happened. I was lucky that way. And we put on a new gymnasium in a renovation project at Bethel High School, $32 million. And because we renovated the athletic facility, we then had to renovate every athletic facility that our kids used as part of their high school. So we had to dig out our newly put in dugouts because they had stairs and they didn't have ramps for the handicap. And we had to put in an $80,000 elevator and attach it to our booth in our football stadium in case somebody in a wheelchair wanted to go up in the booth. And in my years there, no one has ever gone up in the booth, but the only way to get the CO was to put the elevator in. So when I think about these buildings and I think about renovating them, it's kind of like, and someone has told me this, and I've used it a couple of times, when you pick up a rock and one side's beautiful, and then you see the other side, and you see the worms, and you see the dirt, and you see the problems. That's what's going to happen when we start to really think about these buildings. But with that said, you as community members and taxpayers have every right to have that information found out and to fix the buildings and renovate them and do what you need to do. But right now, we need to move forward and decide what we're going to do, and then after we make those decisions of what we're going to look at as far as the options, then we see whether or not, when we get the architects in and the engineers, et cetera, if it's worth the cost. So that's the best answer I can give for that, and I'm sorry if it's not the answer you want, but. Right, if any option that you pick that keeps elementary schools, part of the researching and the discovery is going to be somebody to go in there and look at those buildings, and you're going to get that information. Do you want to keep doing questions? Come back up here, I don't want to be alone. Okay, yes?
Superintendent Constantino, I have a question for you. I'm fairly new here and in Washington primary. The concern I have, I'm very lucky that I could be here tonight. I'm a working mom, and what I'm a bit taken back by is, okay, I've jumped in the middle of this. You're asking us to make a decision on the ones that we want to narrow it down for studies. But as people have said here, it's hard to make a decision when you don't have all the facts, number one. Number two, the fact that I'm here, when I think of how many parents are not here, I would like to say I think it's not an effective way to communicate, to make such a dramatic change with families with children. Why wasn't there something put in every kid's backpack or folder and a website that we as families, like my husband and I, could sit at the kitchen table, peruse the website, click on it, see examples or this added information that we're all asking, have a discussion at home, and then a deadline, either you file online or you send an envelope back into with your vote, into the school, because to put pressure on everybody when, hey, I'm sure a lot of parents would like to know this information, and not that they are apathetic, but they couldn't make it. I just think this is not the best way to communicate.
I hear you, and from somebody who had the pleasure of going through Dr. Storm's boxes, the past superintendent, he left me 18 boxes. This has been going on in this region since the 70s. I have architectural binders, letters, board minutes to prove it. I don't know how to get the word out. It's been in my region in review for the last 3 weeks. It has been on the newspapers, it has been on the TV shows. The long-range plan has been going on for a year. People from the community have been involved. I have done home visits, invited people to have me to their home. I'll come talk about it. I had the picnic. You could come talk to me about that. We have board meetings twice a month where it's on the agenda. People, you're in a place right now where we can either find all of these reasons why not to move forward or move forward. As the leader of this district and this region, I've been charged to move forward. Tonight, I'm going to say it again. We are not making any decisions. All we are doing is deciding on which options we are going to research. That's it. And when we do decide which option is the best, and we get the costs, we still are not making any decisions, because then it sits in the lap of the Board of Education, and then they decide what they're going to do. So parents are going to have ample opportunity to talk to board members, to come back to meetings. When we do research the 5, we will have a meeting again. Every group will do a presentation about what each one is, the costs, the buildings, the this, the that, the everything. And I don't know, I met with PTOs, I told them, call your people, tell your people, you can only do so much. And I don't mind answering questions, I really don't. I can do this all night, I have no problem. And Jonathan too, we're committed to be here till 3 in the morning if we have to. But I do want us to kind of keep the questions on the options, so that this way we then can generate more options. So with that said, yes.
I will just say on behalf of the Washington Primary School PTO, I was not at the last meeting, I'm embarrassed to say. So I clearly get the importance of all of us needing to be here tonight. And at Washington Primary School, we did call every family on our directory, and I left messages. And I also know, listening to Dr. Constantino, you were at all the open houses, saying, I was at 2 of them, that there was meetings that I didn't attend that I should have. So, hopefully moving forward, as hard as it is, and I have my husband home tonight watching the kids, so I can be here, we have to do the best we can to move forward from here, I feel, so we can make some decisions.
Thank you.
All we're trying to do is just narrow the lens a little bit. I mean, that's it. We're trying to walk slowly and narrow the lens, that's all. Questions about the options? Yes, ma'am.
A number of your options include a pre-K program.
Yes.
That's a program that we don't currently have in our district, and I think we should learn a little bit about it if we're going to be investigating a program that we don't have.
We do have a pre-K program in our schools. It's called REACH. It's at the high school.
Yes, it's part of REACH, but this is a...
Well, that's what the pre-K, it services our students. As a matter of fact, in this week's newsletter, there is a survey because we are trying to expand our pre-K next year to full day. Currently, we have 13 students on the waiting list, and we're asking for your opinion. So The pre-K school came from a parent idea at the last meeting, so that's why it is included. One of the state's goals is to have universal pre-K for all students, so if we're able to do that within the budget that we currently have, as supported by the community, we think it would be a great opportunity to get kids in school a little earlier.
So will the options that don't include the pre-K program not include REACH, or do they still include the REACH lottery program, whereas the other ones include a REACH program that includes all students?
I think when you don't see the pre-K listed out, they're assuming that it's going to stay with the Shepaug kids. That's how I'm reading the options.
It's not that it's not going to be here, it's just going to be where it currently is. It's just not going to change.
And does it still include a lottery program, or is it all inclusive for?
Right now, it's a lottery program. If we can get it in the budget for next year, full day, we have the space at this point. We have the staff. It would be, a nominal maybe transportation fee. We can get the board to pass that and approve that. We're going out full day next year.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
The whole flavor of the long-term planning committee is to fix the schools, but we cannot fix the schools to the detriment of the individual town. Any option that takes a school out of specifically Roxbury or Bridgewater, leaving those towns with no school, will not pass a referendum, no matter what, and would be a detriment if it did. The real estate values would tank. We're already struggling with a low demographic. That would narrow down your potential list to 7.
And that,
So I am suggesting that anything that has a school coming out of either Roxbury or Bridgewater be taken off the table. Don't waste the time.
I think you're going to have a chance. That's what this process.
But Washington would still have.
Okay, everyone's here, please.
That's what the process, I understand.
If you're in a town without a school in its border, that is a distinction that you do not need and you do not want. That's my point. No disrespect to Washington.
I understand.
There's already two schools there.
Yes, sir.
Looking at your options, I'm surprised by the lack of information that's been gathered over the past several years, different living meetings that had happened several years ago that studied the consolidated school and the renovation projects. Some of these options talk about building a new building. Most of us know the story about trying to find a piece of property amongst the two towns that's appropriate for the building, which is the Deli. One of the committees studied adding a building up here. We determined we didn't have the space for it. A lot of the information, a lot of the options that you have on this list would be crossed off if you look back into the folders and findings that you have and you realize it was just impractical. All this, we've done studies, we've paid for studies in the past, over each building, all the primary schools. We have architectural studies and engineering studies that describe the failure and shortcomings of these buildings. It's kind of something that needs to happen. You could very quickly go through that information and start to whittle down this list. It's a little frustrating to be part of that effort years ago. None of that effort reflected in this. And we're starting over again and again. And every year it seems like we're back to zero.
And part of the reason, frankly, is simply to not prejudge the start of the committee. For every 2 people that we would pick up because we started from where we left off, we'd lose 2 because they said, well, why didn't you think of this? And we've had some of that here tonight already. I mean, so it's...
Written records. There's reports and studies that the town's paid for.
I understand that. But just as if for the previous speaker's point, for people who have that background knowledge, that will influence what they do, and that will be represented in the decision of the group. The impractical choices that you believe are impractical and that most of your peers think are impractical will get washed out by the selection. That's the point of it.
Well, I don't want to get to the point where we decide that we're going to study each of the 3 schools and hire another architectural firm and engineering firm to go back and restudy these schools.
Well, once we decide on the proposals that we are going to study, I will then bring out, I have folders, I have the last, I believe it was 2002, where we have pros and cons of 10 possible studies. I share that with the research groups. The Don O'Leary, who is not here, and our facilities has already done a study of the high school area and the Shepaug area on whether or not it can sustain another building or it cannot, and the state of that school. This school has been studied. So we do have some things in the work that have just happened, and we will share that information. But right now, I don't want to put a lot of information out there until you decide, regardless of what the issues are, when you think of the criteria we talked about, educational, financial, what are you as a person and a taxpayer and a resident of this community, what do you want to vote for, what do you want to put forward? And we're going to tally that, and we're going to see what comes out right in front of you. And you know, we're trying to be fair and open and honest. Honestly, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to do this because it's very frustrating, I can imagine, for those of you who have sat through this for 30 years, and you keep talking about the same things, and you keep going around and around in circles, and nothing gets done. I can understand, I'd be frustrated. Yes?
Do it all over again?
Yes?
In order to evaluate the different options, clearly everyone wants what's in their child and their community's best interest, and will fiercely advocate for that. And I'm wondering about specifically some more information about the first three options with the tuitioning out, because I think if people do not have information about what that means, they'll be quick to rule it in or out. Whereas if there's more information, people may consider other options that might work for everyone. Also with the elementary magnet schools, with the idea that it would be possible perhaps to keep all of the schools if each of them had a theme or a specialty. Is there additional funding available for magnet schools that we would be bringing in by calling it a magnet school, or less stringent teaching goals by calling it magnet?
To your first point, any information about a tuition out program would really be speculative until the boards involved got together and tried to negotiate something. I mean, basically, if you took a compass and did a 20-mile circle around Shepaug and see which high schools are available for that potential, you could get a sense of where you might go. And then it will be up to the two boards of ed to negotiate an agreement. We have experience with that. Oxford did it up until very recently, until they built their own high school. They had an agreement with two different districts. Parents could choose between them. It's very hard to predict simply because we don't know where you try to go and whether they have room, whether they'd even accept you if you wanted to go there. There are many variables on that require more than just the community of Shepaug to determine. On the second point about the magnets, magnet schools have a specific implication in the state of Connecticut, and you do not have the population density required to attract state funding for your magnet. It would be a locally supported magnet. You would call it a magnet because you're interested in other people coming, but the funding of the program, in my opinion, would probably have to come from you. It's not going to come from Hartford simply because you don't have enough kids close enough by for them to invest in it. That doesn't mean you can't invest in it. It's just that they probably won't.
On 11, option 11, can you clarify that a little more? You just kind of touched on it.
Sure. I mean, for example, my organization, Education Connection, runs a special education program out of our facility in Danbury, where we provide a very specific service for a very specific kind of child that it's hard for districts to service on their own in their own communities. So they bus their kids to our school in Danbury, and we charge
those sending districts a tuition for that service. So it would be some sort of specialty program where you would provide something here that other districts can't provide for their own kids, and they'd send them to you, and you would...
Like AP classes or?
Probably not that. Yes.
So it's a definite special education. I'm getting confused when you're saying specialty program and special ed program. You're not talking like we could make it a fine arts school.
Right.
You're talking about special education.
That's what I'm at.
11 is specific, the way it was suggested that night, it was specific to a special education program. That, if you want to add that other option that's different, you can certainly do that. Yes?
I got a question back here. I don't know.
Yes, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Twice you guys have made a statement that this has been going on for, I guess, roughly 40 years, since the 70s. So has the school been projected to, the enrollment in the school been projected to decline for the past 40 years?
I don't know that information.
Because that would
It's
seem
been
to
up
me
and
that the
down.
projections aren't very good. If the population has been projected to be declining since the 1970s.
I'm going to ask Valerie to speak to that. I've only been in since July.
I've been on the board of ed for 13 years. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Anyone, that's, a group wants to come to central office and look at that stuff, you're more than welcome to look at it, just so you know.
Every year, we have a demographic study done. And every year, we verify that against our actual children showing up. And it tends to be correct, sometimes remarkably correct. We're talking about within 10 kids. They count live births. They go way back and then track them forward. And for 13 years, we have seen two things happen. We had a bubble of population in Roxbury. Some parents might remember that. A couple of classes were too large. And then we've had a slow decrease in Burnham. That's been established. But more remarkably, we see WPS losing kids. Our towns do not generate a lot of population. It's too expensive. We have a lot of retired people. We have a lot of New Yorkers who pay property tax and thankfully don't use our services. But over and over and over again, the same study is done. Population is decreasing. We can't avoid it. There's not much we can do about it unless there's a special program to draw more students, in which case we have to provide the infrastructure. So when we talk about this going on for some long time, bubble in Booth, now gone.
So are you taking into account the bubble that's going to happen? You have a lot of seniors that are retiring. It's called baby boomers.
Right.
That may be moving out, and that does give an opportunity for new families to move into the area.
Agreed, and if there's some affordable housing projects that go forward as well, but we have...
Affordable. Since I've been here in Roxbury, I've seen the population increase, and I've seen young families come into town. So I just really wonder if the projections that you guys are looking at are really sound.
They're very
Are we
sound.
making decisions based on...
Don't forget, we have private schools in our area too that are drawing from whatever children are actually in our area.
But those have been around since the studies were done in the 70s.
Montessori, though, is kind of new, but the problem is, and I'll be happy to share over the 13 years of what's been going on, because we did prepare for the boomlet in Booth, and now we see a consistent, unrelenting decrease from 1,200 total in the region, which is small enough to begin with, down to 600 kids in the entire region, 650, sorry, by, I believe it's 2017. Obviously, the further out you go, the less precise, but there has been a consistency in these reports. And that's why it's important, if you want 32,000 a year per child, or 25,000 per child, if we agree on that, we agree on it.
And that's why the status quo is one of the options. One of the options to study is what happens if you don't do anything. Well, this is what it will look like, you decide. Just so you know, in our service region, 31 towns, the last 2 years enrollment has declined in 28 out of 31 across the board. So it's not just a Region 12 issue, it's a Northwest corner issue. Yes, ma'am.
In follow-up to that question, what are the projections specifically for special education needs?
Those needs are really driven by statute and by population. There's really no way to predict it. You can look at your historic levels, which have been pretty consistent, but you can't predict it because special education is a factor that is driven primarily by the law and the needs of the children in the district at any given time. And it can change.
So there's no way for you to gauge it, is what you're saying?
You can look at your historical pattern.
Our average is about 14% need some services, but you could have one child coming in who needs extensive service that we provide. There is a stop-loss formula, but we hardly ever get to use that stop-loss from the state.
Yes.
So it varies, but I mean, in terms of services, I think 14% of our population.
Yes.
Thanks, Jonathan. I'd love to get pitching soon here.
Okay.
I just something the woman said in the back, I don't know her, but it rang true with the taking into account the history that we're all talking about right now. And maybe, I don't know how you plan to vote tonight, but maybe allowing people to vote for one of the 1 through 5s and then one of the other ones would give us sort of a plan A and plan B so to guide people as we go forward. So if the elementary thing doesn't work out and nobody ends up liking these options, instead of following the status quo, we could say, well, maybe we can really research one of these other 1 through 5 options.
Yes.
Just a thought.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Option 3.
Yes, sir.
The K through 8s in town. Do we have enough rooms to separate the K through 8 students, or do we have to build on it?
We don't, we wouldn't, at this point, if you wanted to keep, say, all 3 schools K-8, there would be not enough room. And just as an aside, as an educational view, part of the issue that we have with kids socially is that they're with the same kids from K to 5. To make that from then K to 8 probably wouldn't be an educationally sound decision.
I grew up in that, and I don't think it really affected me, so
But to answer your question, if you wanted to do single classrooms,
yes,
you would probably, that study of that idea would probably include some sort of construction to make sure that there was enough room in all 3 buildings, in addition to the renovation.
and I think the thing with the tuition, that white sheet kind of tells us the cost per student on it, the back of it. So I mean, that's kind of a good guideline. It's 2008, 2009.
Is that white sheet accurate since it's not from the Board of Ed?
Yeah.
I don't know what white sheet you're talking
Someone
about.
passed out, someone passed a sheet.
Somebody passed it out? Oh, my goodness.
So can you say that this is not like from the Board of Ed?
It's not, yeah, it's not ours.
Can you state
This is not from the Board of Ed. This is someone who has been at our meetings, who is very involved, which is great. I will on Friday, attach to my newsletter somehow, because I'm not great at that, I will attach the cost per student, and I'll put it on our website, so you will have that information.
And typically, just so you know, for those districts that have pursued tuition arrangements, it is an inaccurate assumption to believe that the current per pupil will be the tuition. The receiving board is free to set the tuition higher or lower, depending on what it wants to do. That's their prerogative in agreement with you. Yes?
That's not fair.
That's
That's not fair. You shouldn't be involved in your personal opinion there.
Ed, it's not a statement of fairness, it's a statement of fact.
Well, I disagree with that. I want a chance to present this.
Yes, we all do.
Are we going to get a chance to state these options, or are you just going to spout off what your opinion is?
Ed, I'm answering
You
questions.
disparaged this once before, last meeting.
Ed, I answered a factual question with a factual answer. You'll get a chance to speak.
I guess I just wanted,
Go ahead.
and forgive me if I'm speaking before we should be pitching, but I guess my concern speaks to the 3 elementary schools, as we talk about each town feeling the
Yep.
importance of having their own elementary school. I think something that Dr. Constantino said at the beginning, which really rings true to me, is really thinking about us as a region and not as 3 separate towns. And I think that maybe somehow looking at this in terms of getting the most bang for your buck and figuring out a way to look at the numbers and letting the numbers speak for themselves. And then letting whatever that is be true. Let me just finish this, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
So that would be, depending upon how much it's gonna cost for Burnham to meet their codes and to have that renovated, and then having Booth, and then having Washington Primary School, and then that speak. Because I think we all feel really passionately about everybody keeping their elementary school. But with that being said, I also feel strongly, even though I am a Washington Primary parent, and if it shows that financially it's better for my child to be bused to Burnham because that is going to be the best, so be it. However, I don't want to just take off the board that Washington Primary School be closed because it's going to be voted down by 2 other schools.
I understand.
So for me, I feel that we need to look at this as a region, not as 3 separate towns, because I think that that is what emotionally charges everything. And that's why maybe having that be looked at and included in, and let that speak.
Well, one thing that you could do is you could, if you ran the numbers on the status quo, on renovate to code all 3 elementaries, and a redesign of this place to do the everything here, you would have all of the building numbers you would need, essentially, to do any of these mix and match options.
I think for me, the thing I'm thinking about is, and it just happens to be that Washington Primary School is the bigger school of the 3 towns. That doesn't necessarily mean that that should be where all of the elementary school children go. However, I just feel that moving forward, it's not fair to just, I don't want to say fair, because it is what it is, to move forward and just say, you know what, we're going to keep other 2 towns happy and keep primary school closed because we have the high school and middle school. It might just be that Washington Primary School is the better price tag for where all of the elementary schools are. And unfortunately, it isn't fair to Roxbury or Bridgewater that they don't have a school. I completely agree with that, and I do empathize with the concerns about the real estate value. However, this is a region problem, not just in ours, but in the other towns and other regions in Connecticut, and they're not going to be the only towns that are going to be facing this.
Right.
Down the road, other towns are going to be facing not having schools.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd like to know, what is the best educational model for the children of these communities? Has there ever been any kind of study of what would serve the educational value to each of those children?
The educational value of each option is going to be part of the study.
Which one would be, what serves the child best in terms of an education?
Well, even if I had...
Is there a model?
That's really the right question.
I understand.
Is there a model that gives us that?
I understand, and I think, just so you know, the criteria that we have, the very first set is educational quality. So regardless of what you did to move forward, there would be a part of that process that would hope to render an opinion about the educational quality of whatever proposed option is there. So status quo, consolidate them all, keep them all open. I mean, if you just ran the numbers on those 3, you would have the building numbers you need to compare any one to any other, and you could look at the educational quality issues. There are opinions, I'm not going to share them now, it's not appropriate, but that will be part of discussion, it has to be. Yes?
Hi, I have 2 questions. Number 16, with the closed WPS and keep the other 2, does that mean that WPS kids would go to Burnham or Booth, or does it mean they go up to high school?
Burnham or Booth?
Okay, Burnham or Booth. And then my other question is, have there been any studies done about which elementary school performs best, whether Booth, Burnham, or WPS that performs best on tests and stuff like that?
We have, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part. I'll say.
She's asking if we have any data on which schools perform best. We have data, all of our elementary schools perform very, very good, and at high levels. There are different demographics, and there are different amounts of students with special needs at different schools, so to compare them, it's not really apples to apples, but I can tell you as a parent, I would be happy to send my child to any one of those schools. They would get a fabulous education. The answer to the question is just what I said. The scores are on our website. You can look at them. Test scores from the state represent one little area. If you look at the school profiles that just came out, they're all very, very similar. As I said, it's very hard to, Washington Primary has double the amount of kids as Burnham. So it's very hard for me to say this one's the best. You know, they're all excellent, excellent schools, and kids are getting a fabulous education there. And, you know, that's what I have to say on that subject.
Yes.
I'm just curious, obviously Roxbury and Bridgewater are concerned if their school closes, that it's a concern about their property values. Has there been a study, and is that a legit concern, or is that just a...
I mean, it is a legitimate concern, certainly, and there's a community, I'm dealing with a community right now that's struggling with the same question. There is a lot of data about through the 1960s and 70s when there was a push to build new regional high schools, and local communities lost their local high schools. And I understand, I'm just trying to answer your question. There was very little impact with the closure of a high school. The challenge is this has not been done before at the elementary level in the state of Connecticut, to my knowledge.
There's really no data to say that they would actually change their property.
There isn't. The principle in a region that closed its high school is that they had a school to go to that was still their school. So if you close one school, but you still have a dedicated school to send your child to, who you have a voice in educating, then the data through the prior regionalization period is that that does not have an impact on property values. The unknown is you close it and you don't have a place to go. That's a different story. No one's ever done that. Yes, ma'am.
I don't even know if this is viable. I'll just throw it out there because I'm curious what the answer would be. With all the private schools that are around here that benefit of they're taking students away from our local community, but clearly they place themselves here for whatever their economic reasons, and I'm sure they obviously pay their town tax, etc. But at the same time, has it ever been explored that because they are taking away some of our resources to teach our children, is there any legal obligation, or could there be a legislative obligation that they have to support the public schools additionally? In other words, if you're taking away headcount, you have to supplement that public schools so that others who cannot afford a private school will not miss out.
In fact, it's just the opposite.
Okay.
You have to provide transportation support. You have to provide English language learner funds. I mean, the path goes the other direction. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
I was wondering if these declining enrollment numbers, do they do any projections for 20 or 30 years from now?
No. The farthest out you'll go is 10.
Okay, so 10 years from now. Just coming from experience from Fairfield, they closed an elementary school, they closed one of the two high schools, and 15, 20 years later, they had to reopen and renovate. And so that might be an angle that might want to be looked at a little more closely before we start talking about shutting down buildings that just need some work.
I understand. The comment was about the experience at Fairfield. They grew, they shrank, they grew again. It's a valid point. You have to think about that. The dynamics of Roxbury, Washington, and Bridgewater are different from Fairfield, but it's a valid point. It's a valid point, right?
I was going to say, the problem with that analysis, though, is that Fairfield has 60,000 people. Fairfield has a lot of affordable housing. It borders on the city of Bridgeport on one side, and Westport on the other, and as a result, you compare it to this area is a false comparison because of the number of people and the population density that they have. Fairfield has 5th acre zoning and 1/4 acre zoning. So it's a much different, it has condominiums, it has multifamily housing. It's a much different situation. You really can't compare that. Their schools go in waves. And when I lived in Fairfield County, all of the towns had waves where they had population booms and population busts. And we go in waves up here too. Our population goes up and it goes down. The problem is the trend is down and the demographics that support it are down because we have twice the number of people between the last 2 censuses, twice the number of people who are second home homeowners who live here, and we have half the number of people in the prime childbearing years that put kids in schools. So the things that create children available to go to our schools are declining. And then the last thing you have to keep in mind, and the last thing that haunts the people on the Board of Ed, those of us that are on the Board of Ed, is educational quality. And that's a critical component. Already at Vernon, you have virtually all but I think 1 class below the proper and optimum size for classes. At Booth, you have half the classes that are either at or below the optimum size. And when you get into situations like that, you have to ask yourself, is it important to have a school in the town? Absolutely. Should my kid's education suffer in order to achieve that? You have to answer that question. But the Board of Ed has got to focus on providing equal educational opportunities. We're not here tonight in order to figure out which is the best of these alternatives. The reason we're here tonight is to try to get on this list any alternatives that have been missed and to try to figure out whether some of these are more attractive to pursue than others. But what I'm concerned about is that if what the goal is to try to figure out which ones make economic sense, which ones have educational sense, all that, the best we're going to be able to do tonight is to have somebody pitch each idea and to give you what they think are the ideas behind it, the good and bad points, with the view that eventually we can winnow this list to a total of 5. You've got 2 on top, we need 3 more. And that's the idea of tonight. While the discussion is interesting, what I'm afraid we're going to happen is we're going to lose people.
Okay.
All right, let's go pitch. Go ahead and pitch away.
Pitch away. Can you hear me?
3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
3 minutes.
I get 3 minutes.
You get 3 minutes.
3 fast minutes. I've been here since 1973, and you're going to restrict me to 3 minutes? You got to be kidding me. You know, this relates to option number 1 there. I think it says close the Shepaug and tuition out the middle high school. The Governor of Connecticut and the Department of Education have made the following statements. A school district with less than 1,000 students is not economically viable. In the future, there will be penalties and serious efforts by the state of Connecticut to encourage small schools to pursue the other alternatives. In Region 12, there's 840 students. I guess that doesn't count the reach, but right now, and the student population is forecast to go to 600 in 10 years. In a recent U.S. News and Education report on the best high schools, there are some very good public schools surrounding Region 12. Region 15 in Southbury is ranked 521st in the nation, while Brookfield is ranked 817, and Litchfield is ranked 1009 in the nation. Our school is not ranked among others, like New Milford and a number of other schools. And one of the reasons why they're probably not ranked, they probably don't give enough AP courses up here because of the small student population. A high percentage of the seniors take advanced placements courses in these large high schools. For example, 50% of the seniors in Southbury take AP courses. There is a limited number of courses here in Shepaug. Consider that Region 12, with 28% of the students taking AP courses, that amounts to 22 students. In Region 15, there's 177 seniors taking AP courses, and there should be, therefore I would conclude there is a wider advanced placement curriculum in the Southbury High School. Brookfield has 106 seniors taking AP courses. Therefore, they must have a broader curriculum as well. The student teacher ratio is much higher in Region 15 and Brookfield. Thus, this has an impact on the district cost per pupil. Now, the back side of this piece of paper is the data from this News Education Report. Was pulled on August 24th of this year, and it shows the high schools around us, the number of students, and the ranking in Connecticut, the ranking nationally, and how many high school students, for instance, in Region 15, Pomperog over in Southbury is 1,400 students in the high school. Brookfield has 1,116, and Litchfield has 568.
3 minutes, Ed, wrap it up.
Sure, I don't mind until I keep on going until you come over here and move me outside. You notice that Shepaug, these numbers come from the state website that shows the cost per student at $19,500 compared to Brookfield at $11,888. So there's a sizable difference in the cost per student between these numbers. There's numbers from 2008, 2009. That's the latest that they publish in the state. If you notice a calculation down below, there's almost $3.4 million in tax money if you were able to tuition out the students.
So you vote for one, is that it?
Yeah. Pardon me?
So you vote for one, is that it?
Do I vote for one? Yes.
Okay.
You're gonna put the hook on me, all right?
I just want to let you know that certainly if you want to speak to any of the proposals, or you want to add a proposal, if you want to line up against this wall, you're more than welcome to do that. Thank you. Say your name too, so we know who you are.
Okay. My name is Eileen Buckeye, and I live in Bridgewater. And I moved to Bridgewater 20 years ago, and I have never sent a child to a school in Region 12. They were too old. And I realize you're reaching out to a lot of people, but the people with hair like mine are not being well represented. Go to a senior center, we all have one, and tell them what you think, because I know what I think. I know that after moving 30 times throughout the United States and overseas, I never moved to a town that did not have a school. And if we accept this idea of eliminating a school, even if it's, as someone mentioned, they had the regional school, counts to me. But if you eliminate the school from the town, you eliminate people moving in. Now, I bought into this town partially because of Burnham School, with no children in my family. But I was thinking ahead to the time when I might have to sell my house. Now, traditionally, seniors are very tight with their money. I know I am. And tight is another way of thinking, don't spend that money. But seniors are going to find out that if they don't have a town school, they're not going to be able to sell their houses. Now, you might not have data for that, but I can tell you I dealt with real estate agents in 30 states. And if you don't have a school, you don't sell a house. Now, the other thing that's interesting to me personally is I retired from this school after 40 years in education. And I taught from the cradle to the grave. I did ESL all over the world, and I did it for Region 12. And I can tell you that having taught in this school, anyone who says disparaging things about small classes, read the advertising for private schools throughout the United States and the world. Nobody says, well, we're really sorry, but we have a small teacher-student ratio. Please. Now, I'm supporting option 10, because in option 10, every town keeps a school. Might not be an elementary school, but it's a school. And I think firmly that in reaching out to the community, because I can tell you for a fact, the second one, consolidate, is dead before you open your mouth. So that's my plan.
Can I just put another little rule in there? We're only speaking positively about our choice. We're not disparaging other choices. Okay, we want everybody really to have a voice. And if you can start by saying what you are speaking for and end by saying what you're speaking for, and then speak about it in the middle, that keeps everybody focused.
And last one was 247. Nice job.
Good job.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to add another item to our list. Better? Okay, I'd like to add another item to our list. I'm Kelly Lott. I'm a Roxbury Board of Ed member. And I am in favor of trying to find some solution that gives all the towns parity. I'd like to present a solution that's similar to one that our friends in Sherman have. It's an idea that really mirrors theirs, but I think is a little better. They have retained their K through 8 school, and then they tuition out their high school students. We are one of the schools that they allow their students to attend in addition to New Milford, and I'm not sure if there are others. They have not asked to join Region 12. They like their school choice and they like their local school. So my proposal is to keep Washington primary and to keep Burnham, but make them into K through 8 schools, very nicely renovated schools. Then I'd like to see Roxbury turned into a STEM high school, which would be a science, technology, engineering, and math high school, or an IB high school, an international baccalaureate high school. Those schools are very competitive. Their graduates are very sought after. That would be a magnet school. We could attract students from other towns and give our program a lift. We could tuition out the additional high school students, give them school choice. There are excellent schools around here that they could fit to their needs, and we can close Shepaug. I think Shepaug is going to be a very expensive school to remediate. It was built in 1969, and I think it's going to be potentially a remediation landmine. That's my proposal.
Kelly, say it again. So
Say it one more time.
One more time.
Yes.
Okay.
Not the whole thing, just
I am.
just the highlights.
All right. We're going to make Washington Primary School and Burnham School into K through 8. Renovated.
Is it on the board?
No, it's a new option.
On the board.
I actually feel this particular part of this important process has been very rushed, and I'm not real happy with having to come up with these things on the fly as we are. And you all have very good questions, and thank you all for coming. So Roxbury, you got Washington Primary and Burnham are now K through 8.
Sorry.
Magnet High School.
Got it.
And Roxbury is a STEM or an IB magnet high school? STEM or IB, please.
And then we're closing Shepaug.
Tuition out the remaining high school students who would prefer not to attend a STEM or an IB high school, and close the Shepaug campus. Each town will retain a school, and we will up the educational competitiveness of our program with a magnet school of that quality.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Samantha Steinis. I work in the high school, and I moved to Roxbury 3 years ago so that my children could go to the school system because of the quality of education in the elementary schools as well as the high school, which I see on a daily basis. I just wanted to, I'm not sure exactly where I will be here. I can say that I'm not voting to close the high school for many reasons. One, I would just like to highlight, and that was brought up yesterday at the Board of Ed meeting, where Mr. Dyer, one of the Director of Guidance, presented, just to also address Mr. Wainwright's letter that you so kindly provided for everyone here. We are a quality school. We provide a quality education. Because we are not ranked on here does not mean that. P20 Council, the state of Connecticut, I'm not sure if you're aware of that, Mr. Wainwright, but they have researched and followed the class of 2004 to follow what the percentage of students who attended college actually graduated from college. Shepaug High School ranked 9th in the state of Connecticut. We may be small, we offer a quality education for all of our kids, K-12, and I just want to make sure that that is highlighted.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Dwyer from, I'll just lift it up, Bridgewater. I have a child in the middle school and I have a little one just entering kindergarten. I have a whole speech here, and it goes to the history and how I ended up with a new creative solution. But if I had my druthers, to Jen Pody's point, I'd keep the 3 schools in our 3 towns and find a way to make that happen. But this is based on what I've seen in past referendums and what I've read in the paper and what I've heard some very vocal residents say. So to my good friends in Washington, I apologize in advance, but I'd like to give you another solution for food for thought. We have tried to come up with a new creative solution that deals with the declining enrollment while taking into account the real-time actual makeup of these 3 different towns with their 3 different needs. Bridgewater has voiced it wants to keep its school, but would be willing to advocate for options that include it. At the last referendum, Roxbury felt the same in a 2-to-1 margin. Washington residents have vocally wanted to consolidate their elementary schools for years. Here's the reality. We have different goals for our towns, and our towns have very different characters and compositions. One size does not fit all in this regional model. The sooner we acknowledge that, then we will truly be working together as a region. At the end of the day, the key is finding a solution that will pass to voters, parents, taxpayers, and residents. The superintendent has said that we should not take anything to a referendum that will not pass. I think that will only be divisive and a waste of time, and this plan that I'm going to share with you appeals to all. I broke it out on Jonathan Costa's educational screening that he presented last time. Educationally, if we merge Booth and Burnham and we close primary, this allows for curriculum alignment, more balanced class sizes, and all the students finally together. So we actually achieve consolidation, but we're being fiscally smart and saving money and using the buildings that are already there. We can continue to offer 21st century learning in these historic buildings. We are well on our way with recent technology and fusion of smart boards, bringing us closer to matching area districts. We should all take pride that Booth and Burnham schools are top of the class in the state. The fiscal component. This plan could decrease per pupil spending drastically from between $26,000 to $32,000 per student down to $16,000 and change per student. That's in half. The plan could save $4 million a year instantly. That building is has the biggest cost savings attached to it and has the benefit of having a repurposed role or a potential repurposed role. I'm going to skip around a little bit because I know I don't have a lot of time.
3 minutes.
Okay, but don't you think for the future of the region I should just finish up? Logistically, another component here, it's very easy to merge these grades. We could do it. The principal from Booth and Burnham already started investigating that last year. We would love Washington to be included in this plan. We could do it next year, given the numbers. The transportation issue would obviously have to be flushed out, but again, this goes to sort of equity in education. And then culturally and politically, Washington has a great commercial center. You all have 7 schools within your border. We only have 1. That's been said a bunch of times tonight. So we just really think that it is incredibly important for our towns to keep our schools. And if Washington, goes down 1, maybe that's not the end of the world, but if you think so, then come on board to the 3-school movement.
Okay. That's number 17, by the way.
That's number 17, yes. And then I have a whole list of reasons why, okay, carry on.
Hi, I'm Julie Stewart. I live in Bridgewater, and I have 2 children now in the middle school. And my suggestion is very close to number 11. I think it's slightly different. It's not a grandiose plan, and it may not even require a referendum, but I do think it's important to tell you just a couple brief things, and that is to have the Bridgewater students attend booth-free school from kindergarten to 2nd grade, and have Roxbury students attend the Burnham School from 3rd to 5th grade. So essentially it's a merge, and we would leave Washington status quo and the middle school and high school status quo. The reason that this is important is because those of us who have been to Burnham have been in panic mode for a couple years now because we haven't had enough students. And we've actually done this already a little bit piecemeal. We've had Roxbury students come to Burnham and so on, and it's worked quite well. So we don't want, classes of 6 or 7 or 8 kids at the Burnham School. We have talked to parents about this, and Roxbury parents and Bridgewater parents have been very agreeable and likable to this idea. It's more of a short-term solution, but it would keep the quality of our education great, keep our class size where it needs to be, and there really isn't a downside, I don't think. So this is something that maybe, like I said, doesn't need a referendum, but would be a great plan to address our class size.
That's number 18.
Good evening. My name is Bridget Buckeye Carney, and full and fair disclosure, the fiery gray-haired woman is my mother. So I am a status quo and/or, in the case of other things, 10 or 17. I just want to make a couple of quick comments. I am a product of private school, for the most part. I'm also an international baccalaureate. I do not have a high school degree. It was actually a tremendous difficulty in the United States when they would ask me for my test of English as a foreign language. So I thought that was worth bringing out there. The private schools that tout the small classrooms often get the most interest. We have small classrooms. That's a positive thing. The walk to school program that we recently had in October is something that I do every day with my daughter. So when I say to you that my 5-year-old looks forward to walking to school with me every day because I go to the Burnham School with her, it's significant. Education has not always meant greater efficiency. And if we haven't learned anything from our history, then that doesn't say a lot about our education system. But that being said, I have property in New Milford, and I purposely bought in Bridgewater. I bought in Bridgewater because it was a small town and it was a small school. And my parents have been very active for the last 20 years in Bridgewater. So I would say to you that whatever we can do to maintain that small look and that small field, the Bridgewater has won #1 in Connecticut for best villages, and I think we should be thinking about that as we look forward long term. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wants to come up and speak on an issue? Come to the...
What if you just have questions?
Okay, 1 second. We'll get back to questions in 1 second. Anybody else? Okay, here. Okay, let's have Emily first.
And then we'll answer your question, okay? I didn't really want to get up here, but I think I was at the last meeting and it hasn't been talked about. It's number 5. It scared me to death at the last meeting, but I'm kind of thinking we need to keep it on the board. Because I have a feeling if any of the 4 options out of the 5 we're going to hopefully come out of today, people are saying they will not pass, it's not ever going to pass, we might need to look at some other options. And if that involves some aspect of deregionalization, it's scary, but I think it has to get looked into.
I just have one other comment to make, and that has to do with the, what's the one up above? It's status quo.
Yes.
Well, I would like to note that there were 15 teachers that retired last year. All were very senior. One of them had 40 years in the system. And I think as a result of looking at status quo, you should have some budget reductions as a result of staffing in more junior people with lower salaries. So I would think when you run the numbers, you factor that in, that you're going to get new people with lower salary numbers. One guy was making over $100,000.
My name is Carolyn Hyde. I emailed each other today. I currently do not have children in the school, but I have 3 coming up the rank to Washington Primary. And I just wanted to make a comment on number 6. When I was sitting in the audience listening to that tonight, I went to Milford High School with Sherman students, and they blended in very nicely. So I thought that was a good idea for here, unfortunately. And the other thing with the STEM school is that as a Head Start teacher, which is a federally funded pre-K program, math and science is foremost important right now. So I don't know if somewhere coming up there may even be some federal funds to start a program like that. That there could be some sort of push for that, and that could be a good thing for this area also.
Thank you.
I would like to suggest 15, which I have called for many years the Roxbury solution. The reason why is that I've been on the board for 13 years. I'm pretty well appalled at where we send our kids to school. We just spent $2.3 million on Band-Aids. We're always putting Band-Aids on these schools. The numbers speak for themselves. We've got Band-Aids everywhere. They're very expensive. We don't have a hot lunch program in our elementary schools. I think it's appalling. We don't have air conditioning in our elementary schools. Horrible. Try to be in the second floor of Washington Primary School or any of the schools in September or in May. Horrible. If we build a brand new, beautiful, comfortable, well-populated elementary school for Bridgewater and Roxbury to share in a mutually satisfying area, they can actually claim to be their local school. Throw some money at WPS because it's the larger population school and can absorb more in the future. And keep our facility here. It would be nuts, I think, to abandon this school because we have a lot of kids up here. Look at the centerpiece of Region 12. Look at this auditorium. What are you going to do? Mothball it? It's nuts. Sorry, I just feel that way. So the Roxbury solution. Bridgewater, Roxbury share a new wonderful school. There is not just 8 kids in a kindergarten, there could be actually 15 or 12 or 2 kindergartens or a 5th grade that actually has a lot of children coming in and out and enhancing education instead of people wondering where the kids are going to come from. Everyone wins with number 15.
Good evening, my name is Kate McConaughey. My daughter Charlotte went here. I live in Sherman. I'm a former Sherman Selectman and former Board of Education member in Sherman, and I'm still a volunteer here. I'm missing most of the presentation because I'm involved in the Shepaug play. This is the best high school around. I'm a passionate advocate for Shepaug High School, your block schedule, and the quality of education you provide, the fabulous difference that these high school kids have in the differentiation that the transcript provides when your kids are applying for college, and not only that, but the education that they receive here. I think that you've missed a tremendous opportunity to attract more Sherman students on a tuition basis. I'd be delighted to work with you on the packet that you present to Sherman students when they're considering coming here. I think you could double the tuition students that are coming here now with a little more pre-planning, and you haven't capitalized on that fully yet. So before you make any more decisions about retracting, you could expand. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mike Sinatra, and I'm on the Board of Education and a resident of the town of Bridgewater. I wanted to speak to number 6, because at the last meeting, I was one of the proponents for that idea. The reason I'm supporting number 4, okay, the elementary magnets or alternative elementary schools. One of the ideas that behind that actually was suggested by a friend who came and visited us this summer. She lives in Anchorage, Alaska. And Anchorage, although you might be thinking a big city, very different from what we have, it has a huge area geographic area that they feed into. Many of the towns that are what we would consider suburbs are too small in population, so they participate in the unified district of Anchorage. And one of the ideas that they came up with was a alternative school that focuses on world language immersion programs. They offer 4 different language programs at 4 different elementary schools in the area. What I would propose would be that we take 2 of our 3 elementary schools and offer a language immersion program. One of them could be, for example, in Spanish. Another one could be either in French or Mandarin Chinese, something that we could attract a number of residents in the greater northwestern area of Connecticut to be excited about. I was a little skeptical. I was thinking, what does that do? Young kids, spending half their day learning another language, wouldn't that detract from their overall learning of English? And as an English teacher, I would obviously be concerned about that. But all of the studies that I've read, and I haven't done extensive research on this, but everything that I've read shows that actually their scores on things like the SAT go up across a number of areas, even in areas like math and science where you wouldn't expect any kind of a bump. But having that proficiency, I think, particularly in a global world, would be an advantage, an incredible advantage for our kids. The Anchorage system is set up so that by the time the students graduate from 6th grade, they are fluent in a second language. And I think that would be a fabulous angle for us to offer and attract students from other towns to our area. So.
Are you going to ask a question now?
I am.
Perfect.
I'm sorry, I was just being lazy.
Oh.
I'm not here to advocate. It's more, when I realized that I had more of an observation than a question, I thought I should get up. But number one, in terms of, and I'm sorry if I missed this because I was late, but there's this idea of a vote, and if I'm a parent of a child in any one of these elementary schools, I'm in an absolute panic because I care about what happens to my child. There are 18 options. I just wanted to offer the American Arbitration Association, when they're dealing with many parties and they have to negotiate something, even in choosing who the arbitrator is, will oftentimes give all of the parties a list of quality arbitrators, and then they will ask each of the parties to rank the list from 1 to 10. So they'll get 10 arbitrators, they rank their list, and rather than just taking the top vote getter, they find the choice with the highest average. If I am a parent of a school, hypothetically in Washington, I don't want Washington to close, so I might vote for the Washington option, but by giving me the opportunity to list those, you might discern a lot more information about the things that generally we could support if we couldn't have our top choice.
That's the way it's going to happen.
Okay. Number 2 is a sort of a question and an observation. My distant recollection of this whole thing with the consolidation was that I don't even know if, it's essentially, we moved toward number 7, and it got stopped with litigation that, as I understood it, was Bridgewater questioning whether, in order to implement a change of touching any of the schools, if it required a majority vote of the region or a plurality, which is a majority vote in each of the regions. And I believe Bridgewater won that, and that we have all learned that this has to go over not just as a majority vote, but in each town. To the extent you are going to take this information, you can learn from the law and you have to do the exact same thing. Because you can't do any of these things if each town is not behind them. So that's the plan then. It's not a, because if you took a hand vote, you would just get a, the highest parent.
Yeah,
Good, thank you.
Yeah, obviously, first of all, this is only a vote to study stuff. It's not a vote to do anything other than that. And we all recognize, based on the history, that whatever option that was selected, given state law and that decision, if it impacts materially a town, every town in the region must have a positive plurality vote in order for that change to take place.
Well, anything short of keeping all of these schools open would qualify under that analysis. So my point is, even as you're getting this information, you should be getting this information by the town. That's the best way we think as a region, is if we're all committed to agreement at the beginning, that it has to be something we each individually can agree with.
Well, I think that if we sorted votes by town tonight, the implication or the inference is that the people in this room speak for everyone in the town that might eventually vote. And I mean, we could do that. We could have people put their town.
I wasn't assuming that it was just tonight. I was assuming as you go ahead and you try to get this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Hi, my name is Linda Abbott. I'm a resident of Bridgewater, and I'm a graduate of Shepaug Valley Regional High School. I have not been able to attend the earlier meetings due to my schedule. I don't have all the answers. I don't know which of these choices I support yet. But there are a couple observations that I would like to make also. One is that cost is not just dollars. Cost is the impact on the individual towns. It is the impact on the lifestyle of the children. We have something here that people would die to have, most people. You can always go find a big city. You cannot find 3 towns like ours in very many places. And there will be less of them as we go forward. Education also is not just what happens in the classroom, but it is what happens in the community. I would ask the folks in Washington to be sensitive to Roxbury and Bridgewater, because the loss of the primary schools will have huge impact. I'm repeating something that was said earlier. Washington has 7 schools. I don't know if that's accurate, but Washington has multiple schools. Roxbury and Bridgewater each have 1. And I just ask that as we look forward, that we be sensitive also to the huge impact that a school closure would cost in either of those towns. And I thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you all for your hard work.
Oh, one more? Okay, come on down. After this, we're going to vote. So if you can still stay, please stay, because if you leave, you're not going to be able to vote. Did we email you? No. Did you write it down before I go? No. 5 more minutes.
My name is Tammy Wyatt-Rill. I am a taxpayer in Washington. I grew up here. I also have a 19-month-old daughter, Delia, who will be attending Region 12 schools. I don't like any of these on the list, with the exception of status quo, because it's what I know. Change is scary. However, to ask all of us tonight to vote on a decision that we know nothing about, we know nothing about any of these really, to ask us to narrow it down to maybe 2 or 3 more is ridiculous to me. I feel that there should be more research done into these to begin with, then from there, these should come back to us. Once you guys have done the research, can give us a little bit more information, some answers on the cost, because everybody in this region, don't mess with our money, don't mess with our kids. It's how it is. If you give us more information, how much this is gonna cost, how it's gonna affect our children, we'll know the answer as to what to say and how to put it to a vote. But to go off a list of 18 choices right now, it's ridiculous to me. I have no idea how to vote. I don't know enough.
I can appreciate that. Do you want to speak to one of the options, or you just want to?
I want to make a statement
Okay.
about the options. My name is Ashley Tano. I'm a resident.
And if you keep having a baby every 9 months, you will help on on.
It won't be, but thank you. I grew up in Bridgewater. I went to Shepaug High School. I moved out of Shepaug to go to college. I moved back to Region 12 so my son and my daughter or son could go to these schools. I just want to make a quick statement. I don't know how many we're going to be narrowing it down to tonight, but I think if anyone votes on any of these options, it should be investigated. I think that if no one votes on a number, we can take it off the list. But I think if there are any votes for any of these options, they are worth looking into. I think people obviously want to know more about them, and they shouldn't be discounted based on majority.
I'm going to give a couple of comments and then you can, okay. I want to begin by saying, although you're voting tonight, these are not binding decisions. All that we're doing is trying to funnel down options so that we can get costs and we can see the educational impacts of these options. I would love to say to you, yes, I'm going to go and we are going to do 18 options. We're going to cost out 18 options. We don't have the time, the manpower, the resources to do that. Certainly, again, once we come back with researched options that will have estimated costs over 10 years, okay, and estimated educational impact as best as we can judge it, then you will have the opportunity again to vote on the one that you think is the best for our region. At that point, you still haven't made a decision, because at that point, all of that information is going to the Board of Education, and they are going to have to decide if they're going to go to referendum, if they're going to start again, whatever they're going to do, it's in their hands. Okay, so we need to move forward. Okay, we need to move forward. So with that said, Jonathan is going to explain to you what we're going to do. And we are going back and forth because we have two. We were discussing, should we tally them here with everybody here? It's going to take about an hour. Or do we tally them and tomorrow we send you an email, these are the 5 options. The next meeting is going to be a meeting where we're going to put together the research groups and we're going to move forward. And anybody who wants to be on a research group, you're more than welcome to be on that. You'll get the email, you come if you want to come, okay? And so I just wanted to get your opinion. Do you want to sit here while we tally, or do you want to wait till tomorrow? Raise your hand if you want to sit here while we tally. Nobody, okay. So and I will have in my office the tallies. If there's anybody who says it can't be, oh my gosh, I know that wasn't, you can come and count them tomorrow. We'll do it with a group so that there's, and honestly, I probably will have other people in the office and then check it because I have a lot going on tomorrow. So,
just a point of information.
Yes.
We could use a Survey Monkey, a survey tool. It could be sent out.
Absolutely, we're using it for different things.
Okay, so why are we using it now?
Because we don't have the options at this point.
Do you want to speak to it?
This is one of those things that you're sort of damned if you do and damned if you don't. There was an opportunity for people to ask questions about the options. if you do it as a Survey Monkey thing, no one, if people have questions, they have no one they can ask.
But that was the point of this.
I understand. So
So now we can go back home, and the people who weren't able to attend can do Survey Monkey to the former attorney or the arbitration person. You can get the plurality from the towns and have a more cohesive understanding of what the
But they weren't here, so they're not gonna have that cohesive understanding.
Of course they will.
okay, so we're gonna go forward. Last thing.
I guess I don't know if this is a question or if it's another option, not.
Come on over.
Hi, sorry, I know everyone's been here for a long time, but I'll kick myself if I don't ask for this point of clarification, I guess. I'm Leah Chapin-Civic. I went to Washington Primary School. I graduated from Shepaug. My oldest son is a second grader now, and I have a son entering kindergarten next year. It seems as though it's not an option to keep things the way they are, which is the first option, maintain the status quo for very long or for very well based on a lot of concerns. And so I'm wondering if that option in the study would really include how do we keep all 3 elementary schools as well as Shepaug, and what do we do to maintain the quality of education? How do we bring in more students? How do we modify the curriculum? What other things can we offer in terms of bringing people in, such as the suggestion of adding, what can we add? What can we modify and add to keep all of the elementary schools and our middle high school as we know it?
That'll be part of that first group's chart.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, one per person. Don't pass them. You got to make
All right,
sure.
so this is what's going to happen.
Okay, just
What's
one
that?
per person. Don't pass them.
A weighted rank does not achieve what you want.
We're not waiting.
Okay.
We were going to do that if there were less than 20 people here. Okay? Don't worry, we're not doing that.
I just want to let you know that we are passing out, don't do anything yet, but we're passing them out one at a time. It says weighted rank. We're not doing a weighted rank. The only reason we said to work was in case there were less than 25 people here. We wanted that option, but there are not. So please don't worry about that, and Jonathan is going to explain what we're going to do.
Number 18 and 10 are the same.
They're not the same.
You want to go through it one more time fast?
No, they're not.
No? Okay.
All right, just so you know, here's the deal. When you get that form, I'm going to put the options back up. Do not use the paper in front of you because some of the numbers have changed. You use the screen that's about to be up there in terms of the numbered items. Because remember, we added 2 items. So if you're going off the sheet of paper, you've got the wrong numbers. When you get your sheet, just put the number of the item you like the most right here. Right there, most favorite. See where it says most favorite? Put the number of the one you like second most next to where it says second most favorite, and put the one you like third most next to third most favorite. That's all you have to do.
Got it. Thank you.
Here are the numbers.
Okay, everybody understands? Yes, have a question?
Same thing.
No, yes, exactly right. Yes, 1 to 6, 1 to 6. Sorry. 1 to 6 involves some kind of closure of this facility. 7 through 18 involve some configuration that keeps this facility. That's the only difference in the numbers above or below that gap.
So number 4 has no, this is pushing out.
In the number 4, it was elementary, my friends here, sorry, and tuition out the Shepaug.
Jonathan, what was Marky loan?
What?
We have, I'm confused, I did the weighted rank 3, 2, and 1.
Yeah, just put the,
What is Marky?
You're just
put it on the
writing
ballot.
the number.
Just put it on the paper and bring it up.
What ballot?
That thing right there?
You all just received a ballot.
There you go.
Next to it on the right, you're gonna write your first choice, your second choice, your third choice. Oh, what? Tell me.
On number 4, my only suggestion was taking the 3 elementary schools, keeping them, and attracting other area students to those specialty alternative schools, such as a language immersion
But
school.
not closing
But not doing anything.
Okay, we need to move that then.
All right, I'm not going to move it because it's going to create
Just put
great
the,
agita.
just put there,
No other change.
Shepaug open. Number 4, it keeps Shepaug open. It just, talks about, giving the magnet school themes to the elementary.
Okay? Yep.
There is no staff voting, just so you know, unless they live in town, no staff is voting. Yes.
Right. That's right. Yep, just a reminder, use the numbers up on the screen, not on the paper in front of you. And move up closer, Ed.
Okay, I just wanted to let you know that the administrators will be at the back doors, so if you want to hand them when you leave, if you would like to leave, if you'd like to stay, I'll be happy to chat to anyone who wants to chat. We are taking the numbers from this screen, not from what's in front of you on the orange paper, from this screen, because we added a couple of different items, and tomorrow, by the end of the day, by 3 o'clock, you will get a region and review, this is the information that was passed last night, the information from the tally. These are the options we're going to explore. This is the next meeting. I really want to thank everyone for attending. I appreciate your goodwill, your kindness, your respectful dialogue, and let's just keep moving forward. Have a great night. Thank you very much.